it in the chat box. We'll try to address it then and there. If not, we'll send separate, because next session we'll address all these questions. In case we are not able to answer due to lack of time also, we'll ensure that they are answered in the next practical session. So, yes? Okay, are you able to see my screen and hear me properly?
Yes, both are very clear.
अष्टमोऽध्यायः अक्षरब्रह्मयोगः। अर्जुन उवाच किं तद्ब्रह्म किमध्यात्मं किं कर्म पुरुषोत्तम अधिभूतं च किं प्रोक्तम् अधिदैवं किमुच्यते अधियज्ञः कथं गोत्र देहेऽस्मिन् मधुसूदन प्रयाणकाले च कथं ज्ञेयोऽसि नियतात्मभिः। श्रीभगवानुवाच अक्षरं ब्रह्म परमं स्वभावोऽध्यात्ममुच्यते भूतभावोद्भवकरो विसर्गः कर्म संज्ञितः अधिभूतं क्षरो भावः पुरुषश्चाधिदैवतम् अधियज्ञोऽहमेवात्र देहे देहभृताम्बर अन्तकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरम् यः प्रयाति समद्भावं याति नास्त्यत्र संशयः यं यं वापि स्मरन् भावं त्यजत्यन्ते कलेवरम् तं तमेवेति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मरयुध्य च मय्यर्पितमनो बुद्धिर्मामे वैश्यस्य संशयः अभ्यासयोगयुक्तेन चेतसा नान्यकामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन् कविं पुराणं मनुशासितारम् अनोरणीयां समनुस्मरेभ्यः सर्वस्य धातारमचिन्त्य रूपम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसः परस्तात् प्रयाणकाले मनसाचलेन भक्त्या युक्तो योगबलेन चैव भ्रुवोर्मध्ये प्राणमावेश्य सम्यक् सतं परं पुरुषमुपैति दिव्यम् यदक्षरं वेदविदो वदन्ति विशन्ति यद्यतयो वीतरागाः यदिच्छन्तो ब्रह्मचर्यं चरन्ति तत्ते पदं संग्रहेण प्रवक्ष्ये सर्वद्वाराणि संयम्य मनोहृदि निरुध्य च मूर्ध्याधायात्मनः प्राणमास्थितो योगधारणा ओमित्यक्षरं ब्रह्म व्याहरन् मामनुस्मरन् यः प्रयाति व्यजनदेहं स याति परमां गतिम् अनन्यचेता सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः मामुपेत्य पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयमशाश्वतम् नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गताः आब्रह्मभुवनालोका पुनरावर्तिनोऽर्जुन मामुपेत्य तु कौन्तेय पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते सहस्रयुगपर्यन्तं महद्यद्ब्रह्मणो विदुः रात्रियुगसहस्रान्तां देहोरात्रविदो जनाः अव्यक्ताव्यक्तयः सर्वा प्रभवन्त्यः रागमे रात्र्यागमे तदीयन्ते तत्रैवाव्यक्तसंज्ञके भूतग्रामः स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यहरागमे परस्तस्मात् भावोऽन्यो व्यक्तो व्यक्तात् सनातनः यः स सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तमाहुः परमां गतिम् यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम पुरुषः स परः पार्थ भक्त्या लभ्यस्त्वनन्यया यस्यान्तस्थानि भूतानि येन सर्वमिदं ततम् यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम् आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः प्रयाता यान्ति तं कालं वक्ष्यामि भरतर्षभ अग्निर्ज्योतिरः शुक्लः षण्मासा उत्तरायणम् तत्र प्रयाता गच्छन्ति ब्रह्म ब्रह्मविदो जनाः धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिर्योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते शुक्लकृष्णे गतिह्येते जगतः शाश्वते मते एकया यात्यनावृत्तिम् अन्यया वर्तते पुनः नैते सुरी पार्थजानं योगी मुह्यति कश्चन तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु योगयुक्तो भवार्जुन वेदेषु यज्ञेषु तपस्सु चैव दानेषु यत्पुण्यफलं प्रदिष्टम् अत्येति तत्सर्वमिदं विदित्वा योगी परं स्थानमुपैति चाद्यम् ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे अक्षरब्रह्मयोगो नाम अष्टमोऽध्यायः।
Hare Krishna, welcome once again all the participants for this 11th session of the course on Bhagavad Gita and holistic living, chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. So we'll do the invocation before we begin our talk. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakkhurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajibham Sadvaitam Savadhutam Paridhanasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneswari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this eighth chapter is also known as more confidential knowledge, because in the seventh chapter is known as confidential knowledge because Krishna reveals about himself as the knowledge of the absolute. So in the seventh chapter, the Lord concluded by saying about how those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation. Because the seventh chapter spoke about phenomenal knowledge or knowledge within our experience, and noumenal knowledge, which is the basis for that phenomenal experience. The next, he talked about of the demigods, one who is conscious about how is the things being controlled in this material existence. And the methods of sacrifice. Sacrifice means we grow through pleasing someone. As we please higher and higher persons, we elevate ourselves. And by one can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality Godhead, even at the time of death. Because what we think at the time of death determines our next body. In fact, at every moment, our body is dying, in the sense that the cells are being created. That's how the body is constantly changing. And when we totally change the body, then it's considered death. But nevertheless, what we think right now, that is determining our body in the next minute, both the gross and subtle body. So after Arjuna heard this last verse, because it is said that Varnashrama Dharma, we have to practice as if we are going to live 100 years. That is, we should plan in such a way, assuming that we will live for a long life. And at the same time, when it comes to devotion, you should assume that you are going to die the next moment, because so that you do both these two things properly. You do your duty as well as remember Krishna. So to do your duty, you have to assume that you will live a long life, everything will be perfect, the system will be perfect. But when we do come to doing devotion, we should assume the worst. Just like Parikshit was there, he was cursed to die in 7 days, and he heard very attentively the Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami. Not only did he conquer death, but he attained the spiritual world. So, which is the topic of this chapter also, how Arjuna also, this 18 days battle, he fought while remembering Krishna. And therefore, he could not only win the battle, but he could attain the spiritual world. So these are some of the topics which are going to be discussed in this chapter. So this, I'll narrate one small uh, story from the Padma Purana, where Lord Shiva is glorifying about the importance of each chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So as regarding the glories of the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he narrates a story where a husband and wife, they were enjoying life like anything. That is the nature we observe around us. Our first tendency is to enjoy. So while the husband and wife were enjoying like this, eventually their life came to an end and they took birth as two ghosts. So when does a person born as a ghost? When he doesn't utilize the human body properly. Neither he lives like an animal which is following some principles. So then what happened? These two ghosts, husband and wife, they came and sat down under a tree. And on the top of the tree, there were many ghosts also. So they were lamenting their suffering condition. So the wife asked the husband, why is it that we are suffering like this? We are not able to get a body again. So then the husband said, I have heard that if you know about Brahma, Adhyatma, and Karma, Adibhuta, Adideva, Adiyajna, then we can get liberation. So this, the husband had heard about this and he just told to his wife, who was in the form of a ghost. And the wife asked back, Kim tad Brahma, Kim Adhyatmam, Kim Karma, Purushottama. Just that is the Kim tad Brahma, what is Brahman? Kim Adhyatmam, what is Adhyatma? Kim Karma, what is karma or activities? Purushottama, Purushottama, she referred to her husband. So actually it happened to be the half the verse of the first verse of 8th chapter Bhagavad Gita. The moment she recited this half the verse, immediately they got delivered from this ghostly existence, and also the ghosts which are on the tree also got delivered. So this is what Lord Shiva is telling to Parvati about the importance of reciting the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna has asked questions to Krishna about Brahma. Brahma means what is the spirit. Adhyatma means the self, or self-realization, and that is knowing about the soul. And karma means activities. Adibhuta means material elements. Bhuta means material elements, the source of all the material elements. Adideva, Deva means controller. Adideva means the original controllers, that is the demigods. And Adyajna means who is the object of sacrifice, or who has to be pleased by my activities. And Prayana Kala, about the time of death. Time of death is very critical, just like we write an examination, that is very crucial examination to decide our future. So Krishna answers all of them and elaborates the last topic in the rest of this chapter. So he gives the answers in the first few verses and then elaborately on the last topic of Prayana Kala. And how next further Krishna talks about remembering Krishna at the time of death, because in the 4th chapter Krishna had said, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. One who knows my appearance, birth and activities does not take his birth again. That's what Krishna had given his assurance. Just an analogy is given. Supposing an insect is there, it's captured by a stronger insect and it's put in its cave. So this the insect which has been captured, it is constantly remembering the predator. That is, anytime it can come and kill me. So while thinking like this, it develops the body of the predator. Like for example, the insect develops wings and becomes a butterfly. So this is a natural phenomena. When we are always thinking about someone or some qualities, we acquire those qualities. So Krishna is saying that if you remember me, my qualities, my activities, my form, my name, then you will remember your original constitutional position. And therefore, there is no question of death for the soul. So, so whatever one remembers at the time of death, he attains that destination. That is the definition of death. According to our vision, we see, oh, the person has died, he has left his body. But actually, the soul is so powerful, it cannot leave the body. If it doesn't want to leave the body, it will not leave. Like Hiranyakashipu was there. He was doing so much penance that his body was eaten away by all the ants, and a huge anthill had grown over his body, and he was just bones, and those bones were also eaten up. But he was able to do so much penance that the whole world was disturbed by his austerity. So that is the power of the soul. If it doesn't want to leave the body, it just cannot leave. Okay, but what is important is the next body is decided based on what we think at the time of death. The moment we accept, okay, I will take this body, then only we leave the body. So who is creating this body for us? That is the demigods. There are many representatives of the Lord who create our body and you take us to that body. It's not that the soul, just like that, it can travel from one body to another. There are some presiding deities, just like if you have to travel from one place to another, you need a vehicle. So that vehicle is provided by these demigods who take the soul from one body to another. And so one should practice remembering Krishna throughout life and by leaving body and attain him easily after death. So if you practice remembering Krishna by knowing about Krishna, talking about him and practicing what he teaches, then he will come personally, or he sent his representative to take us to his abode. There are many instances that have happened like that. And but if we don't remember Krishna, someone else will come and nevertheless take the soul from one body to another. So who are they who will take the soul to different destinations? And what is the benefit of being devotee of Krishna and how Krishna will deliver the devotee? All this is going to be discussed here. Now, how can we remember Krishna? There are different ways one can try to remember Krishna, directly or indirectly. The indirect process is known as Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So that is, one is practicing yoga, but he has some desires. He wants to get some heavenly planets, or he wants to attain mystic powers, or you want to get impersonal liberation. So the different ways of remembering Krishna. How do you remember Krishna? You know about Krishna as a Kavi. Kavi means he knows everything. You accept that Krishna knows everything. Puranam, he is the oldest, and he is, and so on. That will be described. And Krishna talks about the Sat Chakra Yoga. Sat Chakra means there are 6 chakras in our body, energy centers, and which keep us in harmony with the cosmic existence. We have the chakras starting from the base of the spinal cord, and highest chakra is on the top of the skull. So depending on the equilibrium between the chakra and the soul, this we are in union with this cosmos. So our mind, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, they all constitute our gross and subtle body. And by chanting the suitable mantras, we can keep these energy centers working in order, so that the soul can live through this different transfer smoothly through all these energy centers and choose to go wherever it wants to go. And the other option is, the direct method is to remember Krishna by pure bhakti, because pure bhakti means it immediately attracts Krishna. Just like Draupadi was there, she was calling for help to everyone, but nobody responded. Or even Gajendra, when he was calling out to the name of the Lord, nobody was responding initially. But when he qualified his prayers by addressing the Lord, then he immediately responded. Or when Draupadi called out Krishna's name particularly. So this pure bhakti, it attracts Krishna. And one can attain Krishna's abode. Krishna's abode means where he has his eternal pastimes are going on. Right now, just like the sun is there, sometimes it's visible to us, sometimes not visible. That is because we are situated on the earth and it is rotating. And likewise, because we are in this material world, we don't realize the presence of Krishna all the time. But when we go to the Krishna's abode, we are always in his association. For such devotees, there is no rebirth, which is there in all the planets. Any planet other than Krishna Loka, they are bound to have birth, death, old age, and disease. That is the nature of these other planets, even up to the Brahma's planet. Here Krishna compares the material and spiritual world. In the material world also, it goes through some unmanifestation and manifestation. Just like a building is there, initially it's unmanifest and then it becomes manifest, and after 100 years it again becomes unmanifest. But it is actually changing form. And there's another unmanifest world, which the spiritual world. Why it is unmanifest? It is already there, but it's not visible to us. Just like some things are there because of our conditioned senses, we cannot perceive them. We need some sophisticated instrument. So the spiritual world also is unmanifest, not because it is not existing, it is existing in its eternal form, but because of our conditioning, the 3 modes, we are not able to see it. As Krishna said in the last chapter, Yoga Maya Samavrataha. Is Yoga Maya, just like the cloud is covering the sun, this we are not able to pursue the spiritual world. And the material world and the conditioned living entity manifest at the beginning of Brahma's days. What is the cause for our bodies coming into existing and going? We are dependent on Brahma. When Brahma wakes up, all the living entities get their bodies. And Brahma goes to sleep, all the living entities lose their bodies. Just like we are dependent on the government. The government lays the roads, we are able to use the facilities. But if the government doesn't do some facility, we are dependent. So likewise, the living entities in this world are all depending on one particular living entity, Brahma. When he sleeps, we have to go to sleep, and when he wakes up, we have to wake up. So that is the nature. But if one attains Krishna's abode, it is eternal and indestructible. Even Brahma's day and Brahma's night is limited, and his lifetime is also limited. Although it is in comparison to our lifetime and our day, it is very long, but still it is limited. Whereas Krishna's abode is concerned, it is eternal. It is not bound by time and space. And secondly, it is indestructible. In other words, it is not governed by the 3 modes. And how can one attain Krishna's abode? By Ananya Bhakti. Ananya Bhakti means bhakti not mixed with other desires, because the soul doesn't need them. The soul is self-satisfied. It can be fully satisfied with in combination with yoga, with Krishna. But it thinks that I cannot be happy with Krishna. So then it chooses to get elevation to heavenly planets, or it wants to get liberation, or it wants to get mystic powers. But eventually it is never happy. So only it can be happy through Ananya Bhakti, or Bhakti not mixed with other desires. And in that way, he never returns to this world because he is fully satisfied. The soul wants eternity, knowledge, bliss, and form. So when it is able to attain that perfectly in the Krishna's abode, it never wants to come back to this, just like some people go abroad. And if you ask them, they say, I never want to return back to India because they say everything is fine, perfect here. I don't want to get into the trouble once again. So similarly, one who goes to this abode is such that he will never want to come back. Even if he comes back, he is not affected by what happens in this world. So then Krishna is talking in conclusion about the supremacy of pure bhakti in attaining Krishna. If you don't become a pure devotee, you are dependent on others to progress from one body to another. So there are two ways, a yogi, a jnani. Yogi means he can be a karma yogi or ashtanga yogi, or jnani means jnani yogi, who leaves body by the path of light, attains liberation. So depending on the time at which you leave your body, just like at a different time you get a different transport. For example, one particular time you get a flight, you have to catch a flight at one particular time, or train, or a bus. So it is being operated by a person. Similarly, when the soul wants to leave a body, it has to depend on a superior living entity who takes it from one place to another. So this path of light means if you leave your body at a time when the higher personalities are present, then they will take you to higher planets. But a person who is having so many desires to fulfill, when he leaves the body, he is surrounded by people who have similar desires, and therefore he returns back to this world, because this world is known as Bhur Loka. Then the higher than that is Bhuvar Loka, and above that is Swarga Loka. So this is the middle planet system. And here Karma Bhumi, it is called. Karma Bhumi means here people are doing activities to enjoy something. They don't have any higher purpose. At the most, they have a higher type of enjoyment. They are not interested in liberation. They are not even interested in mystic powers, or not even liberation or devotion. So they come across people who have similar natures, and therefore they are just like, if you are not doing well in studies, you join with friends who are not good at studies, and all of you fail together. So similarly, however, a devotee of Krishna, a bhakti yogi, attains Krishna's supreme abode and never returns back. The beauty of Krishna or bhakti yoga is that from the beginning, Krishna is taking responsibility for the devotee, and he ensures that you attain his abode and never return back. So that is the supremacy of Krishna, as we will see in this chapter. Although he is situated far, far away, he is very near. So in the previous chapter, Krishna mentioned several terms starting with Brahman. Krishna is introducing very important topics one by one. This middle 6 chapters are known as the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this chapter, Arjuna inquires about them in first 2 verses. So second verse, Arjuna is inquiring, who is the Lord of sacrifice? Means I am trying to please so many people, but ultimately who has to be satisfied? And how does he live in the body? Is he far away from me? Supposing I'm writing an examination, someone else is evaluating the marks, someone else is giving me the result. I don't even know the person. But in the case of this sacrifice, the person who is receiving the sacrifice is with me all the time. So he is the one who is living in the body. And Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Madhusudana, which means he is the one who can kill the demon Madhu. So he is the one who can remove all our doubts. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Because in the last chapter, Krishna had talked about 4 types of people who surrender to him and 4 types of people who do not surrender to him. And among them, Krishna said, the yogi is very dear to him, who is attaining knowledge about Krishna. So it may happen that, okay, I cultivate knowledge about Krishna now when everything is very peaceful. But when there's problems, or when at the time of death, it is so difficult for me, I just cannot remember Krishna. So how can I lead my life in the present? Just like I prepare for the exam, some people go to the examination hall and forget everything. So like that, it may happen that if I don't practice my bhakti properly, At the time of death, I may totally forget my goal, and instead of attracting Krishna, I may go to some other place. So in this chapter, Krishna is answering one by one all the questions raised by Arjuna, and he's talking about Kevala Bhakti or Yoga and Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Yoga Mishra means you do bhakti with desires, other desires, and Kevala Bhakti means you want only to do bhakti for the pleasure of Krishna, because bhakti is coming from Krishna. So I utilize bhakti to please Krishna. And so what will be the destination? One is trying to promote himself to higher planets by his own effort or by depending on other superior living entities. And the other person is trying to fully depend on Krishna and therefore engages in Bhakti Yoga. So what were Arjuna's question? Kim Tad Brahma? What is Brahma? Brahma refers to the Krishna is answering these first two questions in verse 3 to 4. And then the later verses are talking about how to attain the Supreme. So if these basics are understood, then the elaborate subject is also clearly outlined. So Jiva means by nature is Aksharam. Aksharam means that's why it is known as Akshara Brahma Yoga. Brahma means the spirit, or also refers to the all-pervasive aspect of the Supreme Lord, because the living entities are everywhere. So that's why they are known as Brahman. But it's also Aksharam. Akshara means indestructible. As we saw in the second chapter, by definition, the soul is something which is indestructible. And it is the transcendental living entity, separate from the material body. Because the material body is made out of 24 elements, and these 24 elements are derived from the three modes of material nature, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. So they are always in dual states of existence. Whereas the living entity is transcendental, it is beyond the three modes of material nature, therefore it's unaffected by time. And the next question of Arjuna is Adhyatma. Kim Adhyatmam? Means it is what is my original nature. What is the original nature of the soul? What is the swabhava of the soul? The eternal nature of the impressions that accompany the jiva and govern the body. Actually, there are two types of swabhava. One is the swabhava of the soul. The swabhava of the soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. He is Satchit Ananda. That is the swabhava. And another swabhava is he has acquired a gross and subtle body, and that is made out of three modes, and that is his acquired sabhava. And how does he acquire this swabhava? By impressions based on the activities in each life. The jiva has a material body and gross body. With that material and gross body, it does some activities in this world, and that creates an impression on the subtle body, and that produces another gross body. So like this, he is changing his swabhava. One swabhava doesn't change, another swabhava is constantly changing, because of which he is always acquiring new and new bodies. And what is the third question? Kim karma? What is fruitive activities? Fruitive activity means the living entity, what is the inspiration for doing activity? He wants some result. I do a job, I want some result, salary. I go to the shop, I give my money and buy some product. I have a relationship, I want to get something out of that relationship. So we do all activities with a fruit in mind. And if you don't get the fruit, then we give up the activity. So that is known as karma. Or sometimes we do wrong activity and get the opposite result. So the fruitive activities of jiva that lead to transmigration from one material body to another. So these fruitive activities, what happens? The living entity thinks that I am the only doer. So he doesn't take into account that material nature is also doer, the Supreme Lord is or Super Soul is also doer. So when he tries to act in this mentality, he becomes responsible for the success and failure of his activities. And once he is not happy, then he's just like if you are not happy, you try to redo some things. So when he is not happy in that body, he thinks I have to change the body. So this continuously goes on. The soul is never happy with the fruitive activities he is doing. Either he is not happy with the activity or the results he obtained with the activity. So he naturally acquires one body after another. The fourth question of Arjuna is Adibhutam Chakim Proktam. Adibhuta means Prakriti. The Bhuta means elements, and they are originally coming from the Adibhuta. This five material elements don't appear automatically. They also have a process. So the Prakriti, the constantly changing Chara, We talked about Akshara Brahma and Kshara. Kshara means it's always changing. The material nature is always changing its form. The physical world or material body consisting of material elements. As I said, earth, water, fire, air, ether, they have 5 qualities, that is smell, taste, and form, touch, and sound. And then we have the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses. Then we have the mind, intelligence, false ego, and the 3 modes of material nature. These are all constituting the Prakriti, which is constantly changing, and therefore it's known as Kshara. And there is a superior Prakriti, that is the living entity, it is known as Akshara. And above both the superior Prakriti and the inferior Prakriti, there is a Supreme Lord, who, and that is Adi Deva. So, Adi Deva means, I want to understand how things are being controlled in this universe. Either you may think it is all random, a chance event happening accidentally without any purpose. But the intelligent person knows that behind any activity, no matter how random it may appear, there is some order in the universe. So he has to understand that there is a controller at every level. Just like an instrument is there, because there is a control mechanism, everything is working perfectly. Even within our body, everything is perfectly controlled. Otherwise, we cannot function. So this Virat Purusha, the gigantic universal form, is a concept. Just for a person who doesn't understand some theory, we have to explain it conceptually. So the conceptual understanding is that there's a Virat Purusha who's a person, just like if you see the government, so many things are working nicely in this the state. Then we have to understand that there's a state government, there's a chief minister, or there's a prime minister, because of whom all these are in order. Similarly, if we see that there is some order in this universe, there should be a person, and that is known as a Purusha. Virat Purusha means he has a cosmic body. And the gigantic universal form, which includes all the demigods and the planets. In other words, in Krishna, he showed the universal form to Arjuna in the 11th chapter to show that he is the one who is behind all that he is happening in this universe. Next is asking about Adi Yajna. Yajna means, I said, sacrifice. Sacrifice means you have to please someone. You grow in life by pleasing. And who is the original person who's meant to be pleased? Just like you please your immediate boss and then he pleases his boss, and this way if you go, you are ultimately pleasing the owner of the company. Similarly, Adi Yajna is the Paramatma. All the living entities have to satisfy one common person who's known as the Paramatma, the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Only because he is pleased that even the demigods are pleased. Otherwise, very difficult, because demigods are superior to us. How can the inferior living entity please the superior living entity? That's why there is one Paramatma who is superior to all the living entities, including the demigods. And because he is pleased, we are able to satisfy the superior living entities. And then he is asking about Adi Yajna. How is the Adi Yajna known in the body? Now, how? Right now, I am having a body which is conditioning me through the 3 modes, but still, how I can perceive someone who is superior to this body? In the heart of every embodied being, as the regulator, I inspire performance, sacrifice, and other acts. So now I am not the only doer. Although I am in this body, the Supreme Lord is also present as Super Soul in this body, and he is witnessing my actions and he is sanctioning them. He knows what is my ultimate, because we have so many desires that are based on ignorance, but still the Lord is not fulfilling all. Just like a child is there, it's making a lot of mischief, it wants so many things. But then Father, what he does intelligently, he finds out what is the most important thing the child wants, and he will just satisfy that one. So likewise, the super soul, he knows all our desires. So he will only fulfill the desire which is most intense. And he knows that even we don't know what we want. Sometimes child is crying. If you ask him what you want, he will keep on crying. He doesn't know what he wants also. So but the super soul, he's sitting in our heart. He knows what we want and how we can get it. So that's what he's doing. Adi Yajna is known. How do we know that person who's in our body is always fulfilling our desires? We are thinking some of my friends, family members, they're fulfilling my desires. No, the super soul is the one who is orchestrating all these things so that all the desires are being fulfilled. How to know you at the point of death? Prayana Kali. Now, Arjuna is very intelligent. He wants to know Krishna at the time of death. With other words, he wants to know Krishna right now. He is confident that if he knows Krishna right now, for him, remembering Krishna at the time of death is not going to be difficult. So this is the main subject of the rest of this chapter. Because if you conquer death, you can conquer everything. Supposing your goal is achieved. Because ultimately, whatever we plan in life, all of us have to face one particular exam, that is at the time of death. And we are, whether we like it or not, lifetime after lifetime, we are going through this exam. And the reason that we are again and again repeating the same mistakes and not getting the desires fulfilled is because we are failing in that process. So therefore, Arjuna, being intelligent, he wants to know how to remember Krishna, because Krishna is the Yogeshwara. He is the perfect, supreme. By service to Krishna, one attains the real meaning of these words and understands the. So if you, how do you understand all these topics which Arjuna wants to know from Krishna? So that is possible through service to Krishna. Just if you work in an organization, gradually you come to know about all the details. Similarly, when you serve Krishna, who is the organizer of all these things, one attains the real meaning of these words and understands that Brahma, Jiva, and Adi Yajna, the Lord, are worthy of realizing, and the other items, karma, gross body, universal body, are worthy of rejection. So if you understand about our relationship with God, and then we can understand the relationship with the other living entities and material nature. So this is a byproduct. This other knowledge is a byproduct of this original knowledge, that is our relationship with Krishna. Just like if you have a relationship with the king of the country or the prime minister, you become related to all that is related to him. Although we don't have a direct relationship with material nature, because material nature is a energy of the Supreme Lord, we become connected properly. Now Krishna answers the last question of Arjuna about remembering him at the time of quitting the material body. Because it's a fact of life. Every moment, as I said, the body is constantly changing. We are forced to change. It's not that I wanted to remain as a child, I remain a child. No, we are forced to change our bodies from birth or before birth until the point of death. And so it is an intelligent person, just like the Sanat Kumaras, the four Kumaras are there. They are, although they are many thousands of years, they look like very young boys because they are self-realized. Or even Krishna, he was 125 years at the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra, but he looked like a 16-year-old boy because he has a transcendental spiritual body. So when we attain body like Krishna's, then we are not affected by this change of these bodies. So Arjuna is asking a very important question. And just like Ramanujacharya, he was lived for 120 years. So because he was an acharya, he was a servant of the Lord, associate of the Lord. So this 5th to 8th verse, Krishna is telling how to remembering at the time of death. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. Antakale means at the time, at the end of his life. So end of life may vary from person to person. In one living entity, it ends in his life in a few seconds, a few minutes. Some people, some animals, they live for hundred years. The tortoise, for example, it lives for a few hundred years, and some trees are there, they live for 1,000 years. So antakale cha mameva. Mameva means only me alone. He says. Smaran muktva kalevaram. Smaran means remembering. Muktva means quits. Kalevaram changes his body. Ya prayati samadbhavam, attains my nature, madbhavam. Yati nastyatra samshaya. Of this there is no doubt. So very clearly he is saying that whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature, the supreme destination of this. It's not going to take time. But if you want to go to the higher planets, you have to go through time and place, and so many things are required. But if you remember Krishna at the time of death, then you will go to his abode instantly. That is the guarantee he is giving. Just as by remembering Krishna, one attains Krishna, by remembering something else, one attains the object. So if you don't remember Krishna, automatically you attain something else. That is very clear. There's no options here. So that Krishna substantiates in the next verse. If you remember me at the time of death, you will come to me without fail. That is the first guarantee. The next guarantee is yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. If you are not remembering me, whatever one remembers when leaving the body, O son of Kunti, he will surely attain a state similar to that object of constant thought. So every object we remember, it is existing in a particular state. So that nature, supposing an animal is there, particular animal has particular qualities. If you remember that object, then you will attain those qualities. If you are always remembering a woman, you are born as a woman in the next birth. If you are not thinking about a man, you are born as a man. If you are thinking about an animal or have qualities of an animal, then you get the qualities of that in the next life. Now, since previous thoughts are the cause of the thoughts of death, one should practice abhyasa, remembering Krishna throughout life. So it doesn't randomly, our thoughts are not coming at the time of death. Even at the time of death, the thoughts are coming in some order. So what is determining that order? What actions we did in this lifetime. So every action counts. And so if we practice remembering Krishna throughout, or we organize our life in such a way that we always remember Krishna, then, but here one important point is, it doesn't mean that you remember Krishna and don't do your duty. So Krishna is saying, later we will see that he is saying, while remembering me, you fight, which means while doing your prescribed duty, that also you cannot give up. At the same time, you should practice remembering Krishna. Just like some expert driver is there, he is driving the vehicle as well as he is able to talk to someone or do some other activity. So by practice, one can remember Krishna throughout life while doing his duty. Both have to be done, because we have to do a prescribed duty to maintain our body and the mind. At the same time, you have to do remember Krishna, that is to take care of the soul. So both these have to go hand in hand. Then remember Krishna at the time of death is possible. It becomes natural for you to remember Krishna. Just like a person who is prepared for the exam, he's also preparing for the exam and is doing other things. At the time of the exam, he is immediately able to remember that and pass over. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anuswara yuddhacha. Therefore, at all times, you should think of me and do your prescribed duty of fighting. Krishna is not giving any impractical, saying that you just remember Krishna, remember me, or you just do your duty, leave the rest. No, he's saying both. You should think of me and do your prescribed duty of fighting. My arpita mano buddhir, by offering your mind and intelligence unto me with your activities dedicated to me. You have to offer your mind and intelligence. How is that possible? First, it has to begin with activities, practical activity. Where the mind and intelligence settle, how can they be molded? We have to begin the molding with the activities of the senses, which are gross. It has to begin from the gross, and then it can affect the subtle. So the mind and intelligence have to be utilized to serve the Lord in a particular way. Mame Vaishyasi Asamshaya. You will attain me without doubt. Krishna is giving another assurance. In other words, he says, think of Krishna always. Then, how do we attain Krishna? Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. He who practices to meditate. As we saw in the 6th chapter, Krishna is talking about Abhyasena to Vairagyena. How to control the uncontrollable mind by suitable practice and detachment. So, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. Chetasa Nanya Gamina. Chetana means consciousness. Nanya Gamina. With undeviated mind and consciousness. Mind is something, and the superior to mind is intelligence, superior to intelligence is the ego, and superior to the ego is the consciousness. So at different levels, we have to practice meditation. Paramam Purusham Divyam. On what? Upon me, the supreme transcendental person. Purusham Divyam. Purusham means a person. It's not that you meditate on something void or without qualities. You have to meditate on a person. And that is the Purusha. Purusha means he is the original controller, enjoyer. Divyam, and he is transcendental. And Paramam, he is the supreme. On that person, you have to meditate. Yate Partha Anuchintayan. Partha means Arjuna. Anuchintayan means constant thinking of me. Yati means attains me. So, what is important is constant thinking. Krishna will now tell Arjuna different ways of remembering him. So, now people will choose their own method of remembering Krishna. So, what are the ways of remembering Krishna? One is by Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Yoga Mishra means he is not directly doing Bhakti Yoga, and he is already engaged in some other form of yoga because he has some other desires. And so from there, how does he come to the level of remembering Krishna? One is to know that Krishna is omniscient. How we study about Krishna and we study the pastimes of Krishna and the descriptions about Krishna, that how he knows past, present, and future. There are many pastimes where Krishna knows past, present, and future. You try to remember that he is Kavi. Kavi means he is omniscient. And we try to remember Krishna by appreciating that he is Puranam, the beginningless or the oldest. Normally, old means we don't give it so much importance. But although he is old, he is very young. That is the greatness of Krishna. He is the beginningless. He is the origin of everything. And Anushasitaram, that is the controller of everything. Anushasan means control, and is control of everything. Anu Aniyang, smaller than the smallest. Just like the virus is there, it is waging a major war against the humanity, and people are not able to handle it because it is smaller than the smallest. But Krishna says, I am smaller than that smallest. Anor Aniyan. Anu is the smallest, and he is smaller than the smallest. That is because, how is it possible? He has inconceivable potencies. By his inconceivable nature, he can become smaller than the smallest. In other words, he can control the smallest and even the greatest. Sarvasya Dhatharam. Dhatha means is the maintainer. Sarvasya means everyone. The maintainer of everything, both living and non-living. Achintya, how is he able to do all this? Is inconceivable nature. Conceive means we use our material mind to conceive something. But inconceivable means it is spiritual. Rupam, with a beautiful personal form. Rupa, the name you used. He has a beautiful personal form. He has a form, and that he displays when he makes his appearance in this world. And Aditya Varnam, Aditya means the sun. Varna means luminous like the sun and self-revealing. Just like the sun, when it appears, you don't need any other light. It is obvious. And Tamasa Parasta. Tamasa means ignorance. Parastat means transcendental to material nature, full of ignorance. So when Krishna is present, we realize that Krishna means there is no ignorance. Then these are different ways of remembering Krishna. By knowing Krishna in these particular ways, you can remember Krishna. And another way is Satchakra Yoga. One who at the time of death fixes his life hair, pranas, between the eyebrows. The life hairs are there. There are 8 kinds of hairs. They are going inside, outside, through the nose and through the mouth, through the different parts in the body. There are always movement of air. And because of the movement of air, we are able to function properly. All the limbs in our body, just like a machine is there, it has a pneumatic machine, which means using air, we control the movement of the machine. Similarly, because of the movement of the air, the soul is able to function in this body properly, maintain equilibrium. So, one at the time of it fixes his life hair, prana, between the eyebrows, Agna Chakra. There are, as I said in the beginning, there are energy centers in our body. And this air has to flow through those centers properly. And by the strength of yoga, with an undeviated mind, remember the Supreme with the qualities mentioned in full devotion will certainly attain him. So initially, a person has no realization about God. He has heard about him from someone. So he just meditates on those qualities. And while meditating on these qualities, he starts controlling the movement of the air within the body. How does he control the movement of air in the body? He avoids certain habits. That is, we have discussed in the 6th chapter. That is asana, pranayama, all this pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So these are the ways of controlling the movement of the air in the body. But now Arjuna didn't understand the method of fixing the prana in the Agnya Chakra as a part of such Chakra yoga practice. Although this is the indirect method of remembering Krishna, Arjuna also admits that it's not possible for him, especially on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. If I were to ask someone to do all these things, they will say, no, not at all possible. To attend this class itself is a big struggle. And on top of that, you want me to do Satchakra Yoga with all my job and responsibilities. So therefore, Arjuna also said, I cannot do this. So Krishna will now explain the process of performing and the goal achieved by it. So if I give one pathway, and you say I cannot follow it, then what an intelligent person will do, he will give an alternate pathway and also say that you will get the same result by this alternative. So similarly, Krishna also tells that if you want, you can follow this process. If you cannot, I will suggest another way. So what is that? Because what are the main requirements of Satchakra Yoga? One has to be renounced or no attachments, which is also very difficult for us. That is, one should be raga, vita raga. Vita means attachment and hatred. These two things should not be there. But who is that person who doesn't have attachment and hatred? And then one has to be celibate. Celibate means brahmacharya. He only has to think about that I am spirit soul, I am not the body. So who can do that? That also difficult. And knowledge of the Vedas, Veda Vidaha, knowledge of Vedas are very vast, the 4 branches of the Vedas. That is also difficult. And one should always utter the Omkara, Om, 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 because that sound is the source of all other activities and knowledge. So all these 4 things are the requirements of Satchakra Yoga, which nobody can do. And what is the result of Satchakra Yoga? Liberation or entrance into Brahman. That is, you realize that you are spirit soul. So the process is difficult and the goal is also not so great. So the process of Satchakra, what all we have to do? Closing all the doors of the senses. We have to close our eyes, we have to close our ears, we have to close our mouth and all the openings in the body. And how do we do that? Withdrawing all the senses from sense objects. In other words, as I said, you should not depend on your eyes, ears, nose, skin, and tongue. And fixing the mind on the heart. Why we have to fix the mind on the heart? Because we have to fix our attention on the super soul in the body. And fixing the prana on the top of the head. This life air should be elevated to the topmost portion on the head. And taking shelter of me completely, yoga dharanam. So he's talking about taking shelter of the super soul feature. And what is the destination? They have to vibrate the sacred syllable Om. This Omkara is also not so easy. Although people propagate this Omkara, to chant Omkara, you should be in a very pure state, which is not possible. Okay, and one should vibrate the sacred syllable Om. And if one thinks of me, Ma Manusmaran, and quits his body, he will certainly reach spiritual planets, Paramam Gatim. So this is the process for one who is following this Satchakra Yoga, which may have been possible in the previous yugas. And especially in the end of Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, it is just not possible. So then Krishna gives an alternative how to remember him by pure bhakti. Just like previously when they were preparing for a very competitive exam, they used to approach a very qualified person. Of course, you can go and prepare for the exam by yourself and pass it out. But another person, intelligent person, he goes to some person who knows the details and he will take his help. So that Krishna, if he helps us, because he is the one who instituted these different yogas, and if you go to him, then he can help you get the result. Attaining Krishna is easy by Kevala Bhakti. If you are Ananya Cheta Satatam, Anya means other, Ananya means no other, Cheta means consciousness, Satatam, without deviation of mind to other process or goals. Now, if you go to these other process or goals, you have get different results. Instead of diverting attention to all these things, you should Yomam Spanati Nityashaha. Devotee always remember me exclusively. So that is the main qualification. And Tasyaham Sulabha Partha. For him, I am very easy to obtain. Sulabha becomes very easy. Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha, because of his constant engagement in, how do you constantly remember Krishna? By engagement in devotional service. So how do we engage our body, mind and words in his service? So this is the way to remember Krishna, by pure bhakti. As compared to other paths, the practitioner of karma, jnana, hatha yoga, although they have some bhakti added, have their own self-interest. Either you directly fully please Krishna, or you try to please Krishna but with some other motives. But a pure bhakti yoga is selfless and desires nothing but Krishna's service. He knows that Krishna is the Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Mahesham Suhrudam Sarva Bhutanam Nyatva Shanti Prichanti. That is the conclusion words of the 5th chapter. How, if we accept that Krishna is the well-wisher, benefactor, is the proprietor, then we can be peaceful. Thus, he is Nishkama. Therefore, he can attain Krishna very easily because he is able to attract Krishna. When someone tells you to do a certain way and you do exactly as he says, the person is very pleased with you. So, Krishna is emphasizing that. So, what is the benefit for the pure devotee? Mam upetya punarjanma dukkalayama shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam kataha. After attaining me, how do you attain Krishna? By remembering Krishna. What you remember, you attain that. In this world, that is how it is. So, after attaining me, Punarjanma, that is never take birth again. Why do we take birth again? Because we are not satisfied with what we did now or what we achieved. So we are forced to take birth. But when you attain Krishna, you are fully satisfied. You don't feel the need for changing the body. But you take birth again, what is the problem? You dukkhalayam ashashvatam. You take birth in this temporary world which is full of miseries. The way it is designed, just like a fish is there, it's out of water, it can never be happy. So like that, we being the spirit soul, we can never be happy in this material world because it is incompatible with our nature. Napnuvanti Mahatmana, such great souls never return this world. Some siddhim paramam gata, having attained the highest goal of personal service to me. When the spirit soul has his swabhava, that is to be always connected with Krishna, and when he is engaged in that connection, then he is fully satisfied. So he doesn't feel the need for changing over. Supposing you have a permanent job, then you don't feel the need for changing the job. Having said that there is no rebirth for one who has entered the eternal spiritual world, Krishna will now contrast it with the temporary material world where there is repeated birth and death. Now, so far, Krishna has told about what is the benefit of being a pure devotee and attaining his spiritual abode. Now, what will happen if you don't take this path? So, that he is going to outline in the next few verses. So, rebirth in all planets except Krishna, except for Krishna's planet, anywhere you go, even up to Brahmaloka, Abrahma Bhuvana Lokaha. You have Bhur, Bhuvar. Bhur Loka means these earthly planets, not just the earth, there are earthly planets. And Bhuvar Loka means they are above the earth, but they are not above. And above the Bhur, Bhuva, Swar, Mahar, Jana, Satya, Tapa, Tapo Loka, and this Brahma Loka is there. But all Brahma Bhuvana Loka, everyone in all planets up to Brahma Loka. Punaravartino Jana, take repeated birth and death, even if they are pious. How did they go to all these planets? By performing pious activities when they are on this Bhurloka. But even if they go to the topmost planet, Punaravartino, they take repeated birth because they are not satisfied wherever they may go. That's why we see sometimes the person is very intelligent, very rich, famous, strong, beautiful, renounced, but still he is not satisfied. So that is the nature of this material world. You will never be satisfied. So that will force you to change your body. Just like we see in the American history, 1960s, many were taking to the hippie culture. Although they were born in very rich families, they were beautiful, intelligent, but they got fed up with that life and they chose to live in a very unfortunate situation. Mam upetya tu kaunteya, but one who attains my abode, Mam upetya, kaunteya, son of Kunti, punar janmana vidyate, never takes birth again. The rebirth of everyone under the control of karma or fruitive actions. What is the cause for our rebirth? Our own activities. And what is the cause for activities? Our own knowledge, level of knowledge. And we produce the reactions. These are stated in the first two lines of verse 16. Will be elaborated in verses. The Lord's abode displayed in the last two lines of verse will be elaborated in 20 to 22. What is the difference between material and spiritual world? He's explaining by analyzing the material world. So Brahma's one day, this time is relative in this world. So for example, the lifetime of an ant is a few minutes or few hours, and the lifetime of a human being may be 100 years. The lifetime of the demigods may be hundreds of our years or thousands of years. So Brahma's one day is known as one kalpa, and that is equal to 1000 yuga cycles by human calculation. Like we have Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. Satya Yuga, Kali Yuga is the 4,32,000, and Dwapara is twice that, that is 8,64. And then we have Treta Yuga, which is three times that, 12,96. And then you have Satya Yuga, which is 17,28,000. So like this, if you add all those things, you get 4,32 into 10, that is 43. And that is equal to one Yuga cycle. And like 1,000 is equal to one Kalpa or one day of Brahma. And that is equal to one night of Brahma. So like that, he lives 365 days and then into 100 years. So that is the, so this is the lifespan of Brahma. So all this is elaborated. So demigods, for example, that's why we worship the demigods once in a year. On when we do Shraddha ceremony, we do worship once in a year because our 1 year is equal to 1 day for them. And so now, here an estimate of Brahma's lifetime has been given. And at the end of the day of Brahma, all these planets are partially annihilated, they become unmanifest. And then manifest and unmanifest states of material world. At the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest, vyakta. That is, the living entities assume some form. Just like when we wake up in the morning, we start acting. And when the night falls, they become unmanifest, avyakta again. They again give up their bodies because they are not happy with the body. Just like you buy a house, then you're not happy with the house, you give up that house and accept another house. So this living entities constantly they are changing this body, and that is happening according to the life cycle of Brahma. In this way, the jivas appear and disappear again and again, bhutva bhutva praliyate, as the days and nights of Brahma arrive. So helplessly, the living entities are changing their bodies, and that's happening because of the lifetime. So in this world, everything is relative. Whatever we are doing is related to some other's life. So superior to the unmanifest state of Brahma's night in this material world, there is another unmanifest nature, which is the eternal spiritual world. So Krishna is telling that in this material world, everything is relative. But beyond this material world, which goes through this manifest and unmanifest, there is another spiritual world, which is also unmanifest, but it is manifest under certain conditions if we develop our spiritual senses. So what is the greatness of that spiritual world? It's never annihilated. Whereas this manifest and unmanifest material world, it also goes through its annihilation. The eternal spiritual world is, which is Sanatana, eternal, it is supreme, indestructible. That's why it is known as Akshara Brahma. This chapter is transcendent to this manifested and manifest matter. In other words, it is not affected by the three modes or time. And when all in this material world is annihilated, it remains as it is. So that is our original nature. Abjaktokshara ityuktas tammahu paramam gatim. Yam prapyanana nivartante tadhama paramam mama. That which is described as unmanifest and infallible, indestructible, eternal, and the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns. What is the nature of this spiritual world? One who attains that spiritual world will never come back, will not attain a material body again. And that is his supreme abode. Why it is like that? Because that is where the Lord is residing. How do we reside in a place? It is by consciousness. Supposing you may be sitting in one place, but your mind may be somewhere else. So like that, how do we change our places? Actually, it depends on our consciousness. So you may be in this material world, but if your consciousness is transcendental, then you are not in this world. But if you, so we change these places by changing our consciousness. Having described about his supreme abode, Krishna will now describe the process of attaining that abode. First, Krishna is giving information about the spiritual world. Krishna's abode is attainable by Ananya Bhakti, pure Bhakti. Just like if you want to go to an American country, you have to go to the American consulate and you have to apply for a visa. So in other words, that visa is not granted by your parent country, but it's offered by the foreign nation. Similarly, if you want to attain any planet, you have to please the person who is owning that place. So similarly, if you want to attain Krishna's abode, you have to please Krishna. And that is possible by pure bhakti. Because Krishna is pure, he is the Pavitram, he wants us to act in a pure way. Purusha sa parapata bhaktva labhyastvananya. Oh Partha, the Supreme Person is greater than. Why he is demanding such pure bhakti? Because he is the greatest. Obviously, if you want to achieve the greatest person, you have to follow the standards he is setting. And he is attainable by unalloyed and undeviated devotion. So if you do it in the way that he is, for example, Krishna said, Patram Pushpam Phalam Tam, you can offer me a leaf, flower, fruit, or water. That's also enough to satisfy him. But Bhaktya, you have to offer it with love and devotion. That is the only thing he's expecting. Just like a rich father is there, he is only expecting the love of this child, because the moment the child is born to that person, he acquires the property of the father also. So it is quite natural that you will get all his merits. Yasyanta Stani Bhutani, everything is situated within him. So Stani means situated, means is depending on him. Yena Sarvam Vidam Tatam, he is all pervading, although he is present in his abode. Just like the sun is situated in one place, but because of the sunlight, all the universes are existing. So similarly, although he is situated in his transcendental position, he is maintaining all the worlds and all the living entities. So why do we have to perform this pure bhakti? Different times of the, I shall now explain the different times of at which passing away from this world, the yogi does or does not return to this world. So Krishna will talk about how the state of mind at the time of death will determine our next destination, because at every moment of the day, it is controlled by the presiding deities. Just like we put a watchman in the night, we have some policeman, it is like that we assign duties according to the time. So similarly, every moment in our life, there's a presiding deity, and they will determine our movement from one position to another. So this is very important. The two ways of living, just like in the house, we have some people who are determining what we do at every moment. And once you go to office, there are some people who determine what we do there. Once we are on the road, there are some people who determine how fast or slow we are moving. So every moment of our life, it is governed by some personality. So therefore, there are two ways of leaving the body. One is the path of light. At an auspicious moment in the light, the fire, when the sun god is under influence during the day, Shukla Paksha, that is fortnight, the moon has two faces, the bright face and the dark face, and the summer solstice and winter solstice, so that is Dakshinayana and Uttarayana. So if you leave this body at these different moments of time, because these times are governed by certain deities, and they, what do? They help you to attain liberation, and we go outside this material world. So they are the jnanis and yogis. The jnanis and yogis, they are able to regulate their lives such a way that they are able to leave their body at a particular time when these particular deities are residing at that place. And so, if they, with the help of those presiding deities, they are able to go beyond this material existence. And another is the path of darkness. During the person is leaving at his body at the time of the smoke, or in the dark phase of the moon, or in the southern solstice, where it is governed by different set of personalities who are governing this material world. So they ensure that you come back to this material world. So there are two different sets of deities. One set of deities, depending on the time you leave your body, they help you go beyond this material world. Another set of deities governing different points of time during the day or the year, they ensure that you come back with this same material body in this material world. So that is very important. Just like if you miss a bus or miss a train, you have to take another whatever train or bus is available. Similarly, if you don't take help from these different personalities, either you get elevation or you have to take birth again. The what is carrying at the time of death, the mind carries one to a new life. So what is it is attracting these different personalities at different time? That is our mind. Just like a person went to Brindavan, and he was told that in Brindavan the tree fulfill all his desires. So he went to one Kalpavriksha and he said, I wanted this. Then the tree gave that. He wanted something else. He wanted that. Like this, he was going on asking, and the tree was giving everything he wanted. At one point, he thought, oh, maybe what if a tiger comes because there's a forest? Then immediately a tiger came and he was killed. So like that, we are inviting death by thinking. That's why a recent doctor also was, Padma Bhushan doctor was saying that all our diseases are because of the mind. So similarly, death is the greatest disease which we are inviting with the help, due to our mind. So the mind carries one to a new life. People in general must leave the body at a suitable time to be assured whether or not to return to this material world. That's why when a person is born or is dying, they calculate the astrology and they say that, okay, this person had a good destination, or he is not so happy. All these are predictable. So, but for the pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear of returning to this world. So whether he remembers Krishna or doesn't remember at the time of death, Krishna, it takes note of this person's devotion which he has done, and he will make some arrangement. Just like Ajamila was there. He was a pious Brahmana, but by bad association, he gave up all the pious activities. But he was always chanting the name of Narayana. So at the time of death, Yamadutas came. But then immediately Vishnudutas responded because he called out Narayana. And then they ensured that he is not taken to Yamaloka. So this way, uh, so whether by accident or arrangement, either you know you're going to die or you don't know and you died suddenly. But if you practice pure devotion, Krishna will ensure that you don't go to any of these destinations. Being fully surrendered souls, they leave everything in Krishna's hands and easily go to the spiritual world. So what is the path of devotees? All the devotees know these two paths. They are never bewildered. So one path may take you out of this material world, but it's not perfect because you are not happy even after you get liberation. We are not happy because we are not connected with the Supreme Lord. So that is not our natural position. Another person is not attaining liberation, but he is returning to this material world, which is dukkha lema shashvatam. So either way, you are not going to be happy. And to leave our body at a particular time is not so easy. Many people plan that, okay, I will die at this time, or they go to the best hospital, best doctor, best medicines, and they think I can control the time when I die, but it's just not possible. So without doing yoga, it is just not going to be possible. But the devotee, it doesn't matter when he dies because all the time he is governed by Krishna. So Therefore, one is always fixed in devotion. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukto bhavatana. Yoga means, real yoga means being connected with Krishna. Any other yoga, it can become yoga. It is only temporary. So the supreme position of the Bhakti Yogi, by studying the Vedas, performing sacrifice, undergoing austerities, and giving charity, whatever pious results may be obtained. So some people, they try to study the Vedas and elevate themselves or acquire knowledge. They're always cultivating some knowledge. And some people are performing sacrifices. They're sacrificing the time, energy, money, everything. And some are undergoing austerities. They're controlling themselves from doing certain things, and they're doing something which is very difficult. And some of them are giving charity. Whatever they have, they're giving it to others. And like they're doing some pious activities and getting the results. But Krishna says, whatever you get by all these things can be got from bhakti and more. One can surpass all of them by knowing me and my glories. Because Krishna is the source of all this. Krishna is the source of the Vedas. Krishna is the source of the sacrifice, the austerities, the charity, and the piety. So either you try to do it by your own effort, or you try to please Krishna, who is the source of all this. Yogi param sthanam upaiti chatyam, and performing devotional service, such a devotee attains the supreme eternal abode. So by knowing Krishna and his glories as described in the chapter 7 and 8 of Bhagavad Gita, that is knowledge of the absolute and the attaining the supreme, one is fixed in his devotion by using his mind and intelligence and senses. In this way, he is sure to attract the attention of Krishna and attain his abode. The beauty of Krishna consciousness, however, is that by one stroke, by engaging in devotional service, one can surpass all the rituals of different orders of life. Because in all these other processes, you have to please many different living entities, many demigods you have to please, many processes you have to adopt. But if you take to Bhakti Yoga, your goal is one, that is Krishna, and the process is one, that is pure devotion, and the destination is one, that is the spiritual abode. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you for your patient hearing. Any comments, questions are welcome. If you want to ask orally also, you can unmute yourself or you can indicate. So in this chapter, we have seen about the Brahma, that is a living entity, karma or activities, what activities he performs in this life determine his thoughts at the time of death, and thoughts at the time of death determines his future. And this chapter, we also talked about nature, Swabhava. What is our nature? Okay, in Kali Yuga, Ajamala is a bad example. Everybody will indulge in all sin practice, come to him when the end is nearing. How to cultivate pure bhakti, please? Yeah. So this Ajamila, although that example is cited in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that is to illustrate a principle. And that principle is to chant the names of the Lord. And so in Kali Yuga, Kali Dosh Nide Rajan Hasti Ekon Mahaguna Kirtana Deva Krishnasya Mukta Sangam Pravartati. So this Kali Yuga is ocean of faults. And by chanting Krishna's name constantly, one is easily getting liberated. So this Harinam is such that it purifies us. The other names, they will only give other benefits. But Krishna's name, it can purify us and replace that with good thoughts. So among the offenses to the chanting, it is said that committing sin on the strength of chanting. Some person thinking that, okay, I will do all sins and then I will chant the Lord's name. No, that is considered offense. Ajamala is concerned, although he was doing sinful activities, he didn't do with the intention of neutralizing the sins. He was innocently doing the mistake and also innocently doing devotion. But later, when he saw this conversation between the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas, he came to his senses and he understood that I have done mistake and I should chant this name properly. So through that instruction lesson, we understand that what is the benefit of chanting the name purely. So that's why this chapter was Krishna outlined about pure bhakti. That is, at every moment, we should do our activities for the pleasure of Krishna. That we can do only if you have understood the Bhagavad Gita and practice it every step. That will attract Krishna throughout our life. Being a devotee of the Lord, can't we pay attention to the rest of the things? Yeah, that's what it says. Krishna says, while remembering me, you fight. Which means we have to pay attention to the details of our life. It's not that as a devotee, I just ignore everything around me. No, you should be conscious and then Krishna conscious. Both are required. That's why Krishna is talking about phenomenal and numinal world. Which in phenomenal world means you very much have to take note of the things which you see, smell, taste, and touch. At the same time, you should understand that there is something beyond. Both we need, phenomenal and numinal. So we have to pay attention to the rest of the things in our life. At the same time, Krishna says, remember me. In other words, you have to know about both the things. It's not that you just know about Krishna and ignore this world, or you just know this world and ignore God. Both have to go hand in hand. Then only it will serve the purpose. Next question is whether we want or not to leave the body. That's not this. The question is not clear. If you want, you can unmute and ask. Yeah, what I understood is what should be the time duration for chanting the name of the Lord? Actually, we should chant all the time, but if you cannot do, we set some time during the day, preferably in the morning. And we as practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, we practice the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we have fixed a minimum of 2 hours, but if you cannot do whatever is practical, you can start with that beginning and gradually you increase it. Question again, whether we want or not to leave the body, since death is certain, I must give up body, right? How is it true that until soul wants to leave, you cannot leave? Yeah, actually, that is true that the soul does not leave, no? Because ultimately the leaving the body also is sanctioned by the super soul. If the super soul decides the soul has to remain in the body, he can remain. If the super soul decides no, the soul has to leave the body, the soul also leaves. But how does the super soul determine whether the soul has to leave the body or not? That is where our consciousness comes into the picture. So depending on our level of consciousness, our mind is strong or weak. If we have a strong consciousness, then our mind is strong. Then we are able to stay within the body, even the body is affected by so many material elements. But if our mind is weak, then we are forced to leave the body. So it all depends on the mind. Just I gave the example of Hiranyakashipu. He was doing so much penances because that penances was ultimately directed by the Lord only. Jaya Vijaya, they were in the Vaikunta and they were cursed to born as this Hiranyakashipu. And when Hiranyakashipu was doing this penance, the Lord knows that this fellow can do such strong penance. He cannot be shaken because he is a devotee of the Lord. So that's why depending on how strong our mind is, that's why you see some people, they go to the worst stage of death. They have fourth level cancer, but they come back. There are many instances like you can watch on the internet. Why? Because they had a strong mind. So depending on the strength of the soul, you cannot force him out of the body. When does the Brahma Muhurta start? Brahma Muhurta is 45 minutes to 1.5 hours before sunrise. Sunrise changes from place to place. So the calculation is 45, 1.5 hours to 45 minutes before sunrise. For example, if sun is rising at 6 o'clock, Brahma Muhurta is between 4:30 and 5:15. What is the benefit of chanting the name out at this time? Yes, at this time our mind is very peaceful. Supposing you have to cross the river or ocean, at that time it is very peaceful. Similarly, this time our mind is least attracted by the moon and the sun power. So at that time, if you chant, the rest of the day will be somewhat balanced. During Mahabharata war, soldiers died in front of Krishna, maybe looking at him. What may be the, yes, whoever died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they got liberation, including the Kauravas. That's why we see that there is some story that after the war, Duryodhana and all went to heaven. So whoever died in front of Krishna, either as the opposing party or the Pandava side, they attained liberation. But the devotee goes beyond liberation. The real perfection is to become a devotee of Krishna. So that liberation is also temporary. So they may have to be again born. Okay, we'll stop here. There are no other questions. Thank you very much. We'll continue. Our next session will be on practical application of this 5, 6, 7, and 8 chapter. So every 4 chapters we'll give a break and take up some practical questions. So there's one more question. In today's life, some people may die in temple or looking at deities of Krishna. Will they attain liberation or supreme board? Yeah. Yes, definitely. There's a destination is good, but at the same time, it depends on how much knowledge you have cultivated about Krishna. Just like same Krishna was viewed by differently by different people. When Krishna and Balrama went to Kamsa's camp for for the wrestling match, different people saw Krishna differently, depending on their knowledge and cultivation of knowledge. So depending on how we cultivate our knowledge about Krishna and a relationship with Krishna, that uh, our mood and attitude will be different. So although people may die seeing Krishna, remembering Krishna, uh, the level of surrender, that is very important. Even if they don't attain immediately, at least they will attain a better body so that they can continue their devotion. So that also should be understood. Will there be creation during Brahma's night? No, there will be no creation. When he wakes up, just like all people do not wake up at the same time. One person wakes up early, another person wakes up later. Similarly, after Brahma wakes up, only all the other living start waking up. What does waking up mean? All their desires come back again. They forget what they, just like you have so many plans for the day, but at the night you feel tired and you say, okay, let us see tomorrow. Similarly, the living entities, once the Brahma's night comes, they temporarily they surrender their desires, and when Brahma wakes up, their desires wake up, and the desire to fulfill them also arouses. How to attain Krishna quickly? That is the question. That's what Krishna says, by chanting the name. That is the easiest way. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Kavalam, Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatinita. The Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama. 3 times it's emphasized because by Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, one cannot attain perfection. But by simply chanting Krishna's name, that we can attain him. Okay, thank you for your patient hearing. I hope I conveyed something. If not, also next week we will take up some practical application of all these 5, 6, 7, and 8 chapters. Thank you.